Good afternoon. You're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Jes Delos Santos. Let's take a look at how the local bourse closed to date Friday. Okay, now you have local stocks ending the week closer to the 7,000 level after reversing Thursday's losses. You have the PSCI jumping 0.6% to 6,970, ending the week higher by 1%. This as the country sets clearer guidelines on how they will go about the shift to more targeted lockdowns, at least what will be piloted in Metro Manila. More details on that later, especially on that two-step virus curve. But that move is expected to help businesses recover even as COVID infections continue to flare up. Question is, of course, how is that affecting our local stocks here? You see a couple of our restaurant operators among the gainers. Alliance Global here, which operates, of course, the McDonald's franchise, rising by 1.9%. Jollibee, on the other hand, also ending the day in the positive territory. That surged 1.4%. In fact, optimism is high in the index here on a general level, with our advancers at least outpacing losers for the day. Mall operator Ayala Land also in the green, higher by 1.2%. But it's Avoidance Equity Ventures leading the pack with a 2.7% jump, while Globe not far behind, soaring 2.6%. This as the telco is reportedly mulling a $200 million deal for the sale of its data center. That's according to Bloomberg sources. And while we are on the telco space, rather, might as well touch on Dito, the country's third telco player, confirmed that it had earmarked 4 billion pesos for a submarine cable as they get ready to roll out fixed broadband services using 5G wireless technology. Now, in fact, according to their Chief Technology Officer, Rodolfo Santiago, that has already been operational since March this year. And they are targeting the rollout of the technology for the last quarter of the year, as they have already conducted friendly users tests. Now, there will be a phase two of that project, which shall connect Palawan to the rest of the country. With 2.6 million subscribers as of now, they hope to breach the 3 million mark by the end of the month. Dito, however, bucks the rally down 0.3% to 8 pesos and 79 centavos a piece. They have been in the red for the second day in a row now. Off to some IPO updates. This one, MREIT, you have the Mega World unit already setting the final offer price for the IPO at 16 pesos and 10 centavos a piece. That should at least grant a 5.65% dividend yield to be distributed quarterly. MREIT President Kevin Tan says the price is at an attractive level, and that's going to provide more upside to IPO investors who will be its long-term partners. On offer again are 844.3 million shares with an over-allotment option of 105.5 million shares. Looking at how Mega World, at least for today, performed, it rose by as much as 0.7% to 3 pesos a piece, already in its fourth day of being in the green. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The IATF again has provisionally approved the guidelines for the pilot testing of granular lockdowns in Metro Manila. Under the new quarantine guidelines, there will now be just two lockdown classifications, ECQ and GCQ, with alert levels. These will determine which industries will be open and what activities and level of mobility are allowed. The government is looking to pilot run the alert level system in NCR from September 16 until the end of the month. The DILG says the capital region won't be under any community quarantine once the alert level system is imposed. Alert levels will be announced on a weekly basis. Now, higher vegetable prices are expected in the coming days due to the effect of back-to-back typhoons. The price of chili peppers alone has doubled to as much as 600 pesos per kilo since last week. Retailers are expecting other vegetables to follow. Damage to agriculture from Typhoon Jolina is pegged at around 270 million pesos, with high-value crops being the most affected. Areas hit include Calabarzon, Bicol region, Western and Eastern Visayas. The DA is looking to source additional vegetable supply from regions 2 and 3 to counter the expected price hikes next week. Also higher are foreign direct investment inflows in June, which is up 60% year on year. The central bank reported FDI inflows at $833 million in June. This brings first semester inflow to $4.3 billion, up by 40% from the first half last year. The BSP says this is on the back of foreign investments into Philippine subsidiaries and affiliates through debt instruments. Meanwhile, foreign investment pledges also bounced back in the second quarter, ending 5 straight quarters of declines. The Philippine Statistics Agency reports approved foreign investments rose 45% to $22.5 billion pesos rather in the second quarter. This signals a more attractive investment outlook in the country after the passage of the CREATE law. With more clarity now on how the granular lockdowns will be imposed, how will this bode for the economy that's still slow to bounce back? Time to pick the brains of economist and Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila President Professor Emmanuel Leyco. Good afternoon, Prof. Leyco. Okay, sir, I guess you are on mute. If we can just unmute Sir Leyco just to check our audio.
Sorry about that.
Okay, good. Now I can hear you. Okay, so Prof, again, government will now only impose 2 blanket quarantine levels, at least in the pilot run. That's going to be ECQ and GCQ, with the areas to be classified under 4 alert levels. How are you taking this new set of mobility curves set to be piloted here in NCR?
I think it's about time that the government simplifies its guidelines in terms of mobility of people. And more important is that the seriousness of demobilizing the people is actually demobilizing our economy. We're not exactly locking down the virus, but the economy as well. But depending on, and as the recent developments have shown, despite the very strict lockdowns, the virus infections continue to increase. So I think it's really a matter of a clear and specific, deliberate, and medically guided guidelines that must be demonstrated or must be implemented. And I really think that the COVID-19 quarantine should be guided by healthcare strategies rather than a hard and very restricting military-style lockdowns. It's about time that the healthcare sector takes the center stage in leading the COVID-19 control, COVID-19 management of the country.
Now, Prof. Leyco, of course, we only have a few months remaining here until the end of 2021. Again, that move, of course, was made to help the economy recover. How do you see this changing things, at least for the country's growth trajectory?
Well, I think we have to see how the implementing guidelines will look like. I think, as we always say, the devil is in the details here. While we say that we will simplify our quarantine guidelines, now how are we going to implement this? I also heard that they are also considering granular lockdowns, which is very, very complicated in an environment where COVID-19 infection is widespread. As our healthcare managers were saying, granular lockdowns will be okay if the infection or the pandemic is limited. But right now, this is so widespread granular lockdowns will have to be spelled out how they will be implemented. Are they going to implement it on a street by street basis, barangay by barangay basis, building to building? And then they are also talking about what if there are authorized personnel who are authorized persons outside the residents who are living in those areas subject to granular lockdowns. I hear that they will be allowed to get out, but they will not be allowed to come in. So that, I think, will sound ridiculous. We really need to hear how the strategies, how the implementing guidelines will look like, and how they will be affecting people on the ground, and look at realities, deal with realities. We are no longer looking at a specific area where the pandemic is concentrated, although there are clusterings. The pandemic is all over the place.
Okay. Like what you mentioned, the devil is in the details, and we're barely on the surface here, especially when it comes to guidelines as to how granular lockdowns will be implemented. Now, on one hand, you also have the Metro Manila Council approving a resolution, at least asking the government to provide more leeway for the fully vaccinated, essentially the creation of a bakuna bubble. How are you taking this, and how do you see this at least benefiting the economy?
We have very limited vaccinated population, so that will only limit movement of people to about 15%. I don't think that will create a big dent, or it will create an impact on the economy. I think we have to make sure that vaccination is rolled out as soon as possible, as widely as possible. And the talk about bubbles, talk about limited movement of people who are already fully vaccinated, I think will only have a very, very limited impact. So I'm not exactly in favor of that. I think we should focus more on how to roll out vaccinations throughout the country, throughout the region that is highly affected by the pandemic.
Now, Prof. Leyco, one other thing, of course, that's being hotly discussed at the moment is regarding school reopening. You yourself, of course, being part of PLM, you have now, NEDA Secretary Carl Kendrick was saying that school closures will have a long-term effect on the economy. That's at 11 trillion pesos in 40 years, considering how that's going to at least set back the children, which will in the future be part of the workforce. Would you say it's about time that we reopen schools?
I can agree that the lockdown of schools will have a long-term impact on the productivity, on the social lives, psychological lives of our students and our educators. Definitely. I think our students and our faculty have to interact more. There's very limited interaction done on online platforms. Yes, I agree that schools need to open. I'm not exactly sure where the 11 trillion computations of losses came from, but I can understand that. However, we cannot just say in the next few months, let us open the schools without vaccination. I really think that vaccination is key to opening our economy, opening our educational institutions, and opening our lives, basically. 15% is very far from our targeted vaccinated population.
Okay, and lastly, before we let you go, Prof. Leyco, we're seeing improvements here in FDI, net inflows, foreign direct investments, and even pledges. But still, you have trade deficit ballooning in July. What do these signify? How should we read into these figures?
It's good that the foreign direct investments coming up, going up. But then again, I think it can be expected that the investments are going into information and communications technology. That's good. But the question is, in the scheme of things, foreign direct investors have a portfolio, and it doesn't look like the Philippines is on top of their portfolio. However, it's good that we are now back, so we can expect that there will be some movements on that end. But I think we have to show the global economy that the Philippines is ready to interact, ready to do business once again. I think we really have to make a declaration. The Philippines is open for the global economy, and we will be able to add more value to the global economy and not just being the consumers. We can contribute a lot to the global economy.
All right. Thank you very much again for your time this afternoon. Great insights as always. Again, Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila President and Economist, Professor Emmanuel Leyco.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
And those are the biggest stories this trading day, September 10, 2021. Catch Business World Live again Monday next week, 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe. Philippines, have a great weekend.